A lot of people know about Swatter people. A lot of people don't know about this group called Les Noireaux, a group of nobles. I mean, they're from the patron is the former Queen of Belgium, and also the present king. When he was a child, he participated in it. So they wear this kind of like 18th century dandy costumes, you know, frilly neck things and knickerbocker pants, but they're in blackface. And so they pass the hat in in whatever restaurant for people to give, and they are called the Noireaux because they chose blackface as a way to be invisible, and that's what they say. So as nobles, they didn't want people to know that they were from the nobility, so they put on blackface. And restaurants sort of inform you that they're engaged with it because they have a poster of them on their restaurant, and that happens every spring here. And for me, it's a real way to make sure that the population knows its place and stays in it. It's really to reinforce white supremacy. I mean, it just is. It's telling black people you don't have a place, you have very little or no value, and we determine where you fit in this story. All these racist micro incidents, and everybody's telling them basically, you know, you're overreacting, you're oversensitive. No, they really didn't mean it that way. No, you're not crazy. It did happen to you. Here it happens, so these micro incidences are so predominant in your daily existence that from what I can gather, it has acted as a way to shut black people down. There is a look that you get from white people here that I've never ever experienced before I came here. And there's a level of disgust that people look at you as a person of African descent that is really mind-boggling. And it's very disorientating. There is a kind of sensibility that we are invisible. I mean, I've had numerous incidences where people literally just walk straight into me. I'm physically right in front of them and they will walk into me. It's a sort of inherent kind of behavior here that black people are just not relevant in the scheme. They don't have to physically be acknowledged, and so the kind of unconscious behavior that white people have here is really, really quite striking in that regard. I think if I was coming from if I was born in Europe, I would understand this much more readily. But I think because I came here in my 30s, I did an undergraduate degree in African American and African literature and history. I mean, I worked on knowing my history and quite proud of it, and to just be in a it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I know it's illogical, but I was not prepared for the level of racism and also the manifestations of racism. I come from a country, plus or minus, where there are repercussions and consequences for racism, particularly with visible people. And I find that here, it doesn't matter. I mean, people can do what they want. They can say what they want. They don't have to take any responsibility for having devalued or dehumanized people. It's like the whole thing in the Mediterranean at Lampedusa. I mean, to refer to these immigrants as cockroaches when primarily these are black people of African descent. It's just an indication of how at ease people are at dehumanizing people of African descent. Even after almost 14 years, it still shocks me that I stand and that's like commonplace. Yeah, it's very difficult because in some ways being Black American, because so much of what happens here is like stuff that my mom told me about when she was a child. And so to be an adult and see, having lived in the US and been born and raised there, and then come here and see these kinds of things, it's just really disturbing, because I grew up in the 60s with Black consciousness and Black power, and I understand precisely why young Black people in Europe use it as a kind of template. One of the key and initial consciousness raising tools have been Black political thought from the US. And we can't get away from it. But the reality of a Black person's existence in Belgium or France or Germany, that now has to be layered on top of that knowledge. Or the work is now to contextualize it in terms of Europe and not think that that African American framework is going to be sufficient. It will not be. There's a lot that just doesn't connect. I mean, we, for example, in the US, we have a sensibility, like I said earlier, of being Black people together, no matter where you come from. Many Black Americans, for example, don't know what happens here. They don't understand that there are conflicts between the African and the Afro-Caribbean community. But even the presence of Africans in Europe over time, over centuries. I mean, on the one hand, we're fully engaged historically in the Pan-Africanist movement, but on the other side, we can suffer from the same blind spots as people in the dominant culture. I had the opportunity to learn actually from communities of African descent in Europe about their experience, what they've accomplished, what their communities have accomplished in Europe. I was not aware of that. So we are confronted with many of the same obstacles in terms of dominant culture, but our experience is very different. Well, I move in a particular way because I understand certain power relations, certain assumptions that people make. So I tend, for example, even though I do speak French and understand French, I tend to speak to people in English because it's perceived here as a power language and they don't expect a person of African descent to speak English. It also puts many white people on the back foot. They're trying to figure out, okay, what are you, how do you, they can't make assumptions anymore. They have to struggle with their English, which, you know, is important in the sense that this assumption, this making of assumptions and assuming that because of a certain phenotype, you are this, this, and this, and you come from here, here, and here, and, you know, the general tendency is to assume that a Black person always speaks French here, even if they grew up in the Flemish part of Belgium. The historical power language was French, even in Flanders. So you will know, for example, whether people are middle class, even now. And it's also true in the Netherlands, that if they have a French name and they speak French, 90% of the time they're middle class or upper middle class. During the First World War, some troops were actually sent to their death because they couldn't understand the directions that they were being given by their superiors, because their superiors were French speaking and they were Flemish speaking. The Flemish community is actually getting a bigger footprint in Brussels. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Flemish is actually closer to English, so they benefited from the fact that the languages are in the same family. It really has a lot to do with the fact that English is the working language. If I understand correctly, Flemish is a kind of older version of Dutch. It's different, but they are kind of cousins. And in the school system here, they don't teach Flemish. They teach Dutch as the standard for the language. Language, you know, it's still playing a major role in the politics of Belgium. The change in government in the last election, it was something that was in process before, but now it's really solidified, and that's the process of citizenship in Belgium. I was saying to a friend of mine who's also Black American, married to a Flemish Belgian, and she has a son, and she was saying to me that under the new immigration laws, she can only get, even though she married here and she's married to a Belgian, she can only get her Belgian citizenship through her son. And there's a whole series of language requirements now, which by contrast, when I got my citizenship, which was at the end of 2006, that wasn't the case. It was more about how long you'd lived in Belgium. I was reading in the magazine recently that in 2015, there have only been 11 applications for Belgian citizenship. And that's really because of how difficult the process is and how inherently racist it is. I mean, it's a high examination of your family connections, particularly people of African descent. As I say with a lot of things in Belgium, it's also about kind of war of attrition. Like, how much do you want it? You can have it. How much are you willing to do to get it? And I think that is really exemplified in the process of Belgian nationality now and trying to get access to that. The levels of violence and the levels of destruction that were performed on Africans in the Congo is just mind-boggling. Colonial madness. I mean, it just, Belgium, a country that was punching well above its weight. I mean, it's also connections with the UK. I mean, the fact that Leopold was the uncle of Victoria, he had someone in his family connections that was, creating an empire. So, but a lot of people don't know that in fact Sudan was also a colony of Belgium. And it was really the first. I mean, we have this thing, for example, where they had a presentation of the file, that was made on the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba was the first prime minister of Congo following he was the person who galvanized the population to the departure of the Belgians from Congo, and was assassinated by the Belgian government with full knowledge also of the king, who was openly murdered. On the day that they did the presentation, at the end, someone basically stole the file. So the whole file, official file on the assassination of Patrice Lumumba is most likely in someone's personal archive, which means that there's a lot of things that we still may never know about what happened there. There's a lot of kind of destruction of the history relating to Congo, or the hiding of it so that people don't actually know the full extent of what happened there. It still has an incredible resonance to this day on this country. It will always, until those issues are resolved and that the truth really comes out about this country. I mean, he's the only figure that they absolutely refuse to give a square to here. I mean, even in the street, like 2 streets from me, there's like a plaque for Audrey Hepburn, and then they absolutely refuse to provide a square in honor of Patrice Lumumba. I mean, I know that my husband loved me very much, but he didn't understand my difficulty as a Black woman and also a Black American woman, and how these kinds of behaviors that were being presented were painful and difficult for me. And so in a way, I didn't have an ally at home, and I wasn't able to have someone to share those things with that wasn't defensive, because if I brought up anything, then it was that I was like too preoccupied with race and and, you know, misunderstanding people or being oversensitive and all of these things. I mean, I kind of felt like in something that was very essential, I was on my own. You know, he comes from a very progressive, very left background. It's like a bridge too far. It's like having to deal with two things. One, accepting the fact that, you know, you've been basically lied to your whole life. And two, that you have been basically instrumentalized in the oppression of someone that you love. And that's also very difficult to take on. The easiest, in my opinion, the easiest response was to put it back on me. And I'm also in a new culture, I'm in a new society. I mean, so the implication is that I don't understand, you know, what happens here. But of course, racism is a kind of global phenomenon, so I didn't need Belgium to inform me about what that was about. But nevertheless, I mean, there is a kind of complex here, particularly about Congo and the impact and history and the sort of brutality of it. And all Belgians, like it or not, are implicated in it. And so there is not a real desire to really start breaking something like that down, because it means you have really to do a lot of work. And so, yeah, it was very difficult, to get to a place where you cannot convey to a person that's important to you how important it is that they understand your day-to-day existence and how it's impacted by racism. That's very, very difficult to manage. Yeah, it's very difficult because in some ways, being Black American, so much of what happens here is like stuff that my mom told me about when she was a child. To be an adult and see these kinds of things, it's just really disturbing.